We're live. Oh my gosh, I couldn't believe it. I sat down and I saw there were over 200 people already waiting for the live stream. I'm so excited you guys are all here. I love to see all the conversation happening in the chat. I do want to just go ahead and say, for those of you that might be sitting here like, why can't I chat? Just for my own safety and mental health, I have turned on subscriber only chat. So you have to have been a subscriber for, I think it's at least 3 days in order to be commenting today. So I apologize for anybody who's just finding us or who just found out about this and is not able to comment. It is nothing against you. It's just there have been some other things happening lately that I just want to make sure that this live stream stays a safe place for all of us. So it's only going to be Hardy's commenting. And if you want to be able to comment on future live streams, of course, please go ahead and subscribe to this channel. Hit the thumbs up button so YouTube will let people know that you're enjoying this and it's going to be so fun. Oh no, Morgan said, I forgot I was watching this stream and your voice scared me. I'm so sorry. I tend to come on super excited. I see lots of names. I also saw Little Forest Homes up there. So that means Lisa has officially ended her live stream over in the Writing Sprints group. So it's good. I do love that feature as well. I think it's very helpful, but I do know that it means some people will be left out of the chat. And for that, I do apologize. Yes, happy full moon, everyone. It is also my 12-year anniversary, wedding anniversary. George and I have been married 12 years today. And what an amazing 12 years. I always like to give him a little bit of a shout out because I would not be a full-time writer. I don't know that I ever would have fully pursued my dream of being a writer if it wasn't for George, my amazing husband. He is the one, he was so determined for me to move in with him and to start a life together that he was like, what would you do if you could quit your job and do anything in the world you wanted to do? What would you do? And I said, I would be a writer. It just came out of my mouth like I had always wanted to be a writer. And he's like, then quit your job teaching, move in with me, and you can write full-time for 5 years. And I know how much of a blessing that was. And I do know how many of you probably sitting here right now would love to have that kind of opportunity. So I did not waste it. I made the most of those years. And it has been wonderful because I ended up writing for several years and then he was able to quit his job and we never looked back. So happy anniversary to George. I love him. He helps make my dream come true. So we're over 300 people, so I'm excited to see that you guys are all here. If you are wondering what this chat is all about, we have been doing this for the last couple of years on this channel, and I think that it is something a lot of people are looking forward to because I got a lot of messages about whether we would be doing it this year or not. So this is a live stream where we are going to talk through ideas and tips for how to plan your 2022 writing schedule. I have lots of tips and tricks. If you were here last year, you're going to hear some of those same things, but we sometimes need to hear those reminders of how to best plan, because sometimes I think what happens, and I'll tell you a little bit about my story though. If you download the free workbook, you will hear a little bit of that in the workbook as well at the beginning. A little bit of a note from me is that, you know, if we try to show up, you know, we've got that new year energy. It's that special time that we're thinking, okay, this year is the year I'm going to blank. This is the year that I'm going to write all those books. This is the year I'm finally going to publish. This is the year I'm finally going to, you know, believe in myself. And all of those things are really good and very helpful. But sometimes we also tend to take that new year energy and we start to expect ourselves to suddenly change like Cinderella at midnight or something, you know, that the clock strikes midnight on 2022 and suddenly we're going to become the kind of person who writes every single day, the kind of person who publishes 12 books a year or, you know, whatever. And we expect that this is the year I'm going to show up as somebody different. And I talk about this some in my HB90 course as well. But my encouragement to you is you are already an amazing person. You are already doing the things that you need to do. Just for the fact that you came here to work on your writing schedule means that you're on the right track. You do not have to change who you are. What you might want to start thinking about, though, is what habits do you want to cultivate so that you can have a more successful writing life. And I find that, yes, you could still be Cinderella if you want to. I find that it is so much more helpful to come as you are, to meet yourself where you are and say, these are the challenges that I have, and to be completely honest, eyes wide open about the challenges that are facing you right now. That you can say, okay, I do have migraines and I have to take those into consideration. I do have, 2 young babies at home, or I do have school this semester and I'm going to be working on it. Or I do have, a lot of extra commitments that are coming up, or I've got this full-time job and I have to work within the limitations, so to speak. Although I don't love that word limitations, but we do have to work with the limitations of our current schedule, of our current lives, and meet yourself where you are. Because what often happens is that we see the future as this blank slate, this opportunity to get things right and to become our very best selves. And for some reason, when we see that future, we plan it as if we're like superhuman versions of ourselves. And we say, I'm going to change, and this is the year that I'm going to be the best self. And what happens with that is that we put too much on our plate. We fill our plan with unrealistic expectations. And then what happens is a month in, or even 10 days into the new year, we're already disappointed in ourselves. We're already feeling overwhelmed. And we suddenly start to feel this burden of the negative momentum of, oh my gosh, I'm already way behind and there's no way I'm going to meet these impossible goals that I set forth for myself, and I'm a failure. And that type of negative pressure on ourselves is what holds us back more than anything else. So Singh says, I wouldn't call it limitations. I would call it the framework we have to build on. That's a really good way to put it, because I don't like that word limitations either. So yeah, you have to work within the framework of your current life. And if you want to change your life, then you have to start working on that baby step by baby step, that becomes incremental, small changes that get us to the real changes that we want to make in our lives. Now, I started out this live stream by talking about my anniversary and how my husband kind of gave me extra time, which was amazing. So if you have that kind of opportunity, of course, you want to make the most of it. But even with that beautiful gift of now you can write full time, I still struggled because I expected myself to come out of a teaching job where I taught elementary school music for 5 years and go to the full-time writer life. And I was just going to write, several books that first year. And then I started to understand that I needed to learn. I needed to develop the habits. I needed to show up as I was and slowly become the person I needed to be to have this type of life or to have these types of habits. So I encourage you, as we get started with this process, not to think about your life in terms of what is the absolute best way that I can plan for 2022, but instead, what is the framework that I'm working on? I really like that. My internet says that it's not great connection. So if I get a little bit fuzzy, just hopefully you can still hear me. It'll be fine. I'm in an apartment and we're working with what we have. But it's that true truth of really looking with eyes wide open, no rose-colored glasses, and say this, you can still say, this is the year I'm going to change my life and I'm going to show up for myself. But I encourage you to look at it through the lens of, this is who I am. This is how my life is right now. And if I want to change it, it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to be incremental process. It's going to be a building process. So that's where we kind of approach it. But what we're going to do is we're going to actually go through the workbook. So the workbook that I'm talking about is called Schedule. I think it's actually on the Heart Breathing's resource library. It is called 2022 Writing Plan. And there are 2 versions of it. The plain one that just says Writing Plan is a Sunday start calendar. And then there's also a 2022 Writing Plan that says Monday start calendar. And that is the one that you are going to download. You just choose whether you want a Sunday start calendar or a Monday start calendar. So if you are wondering where that is, it is inside the Heart Breathings resource library. So you need to be a newsletter subscriber to grab the free download. Everything that we're going to do here, though, if you don't have the free download in front of you, you can still do this. All you need is like a Google Calendar or some other kind of Google thing that you want, like your iCal or whatever. You just need a calendar to look at, or you can take your trusty planner that you have, whatever. But if you are not signed up for my mailing list, I would love to have you on there. You get access to these kind of downloads. I think I've done 4 or 5 different free downloads this year, and there's 20 something in that resource library, including my how to plot your novel, how to write a series, Preptober planners, all of that stuff is all free for you to grab. You just sign up for my newsletter list. And if you don't want to stay on the list, you can unsubscribe at any time. But there is a link in the description box of this video for where you can get it on my blog today. So just scroll down and it will, all you have to do, put in your name and email, and it will download for you automatically. When you get the email that says confirm, it'll download for you. So check that out. You are so welcome for the downloads. It's really fun to do. It's very similar to last year's, but I did change a few little things. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk through the writing plan, and I'm going to give you some tips and tricks. And then we are going to talk through the process of how do you actually start to plan? Because sometimes when we look at this whole 12 months, it feels like, oh my gosh, I don't even know what to do. But there are multiple things that I like to take into consideration. And of course, I always like to say this because I know that everybody is different in the way they like to plan. Everybody's different in the way they plot or don't plot, and there's no right or wrong way. It's just what works for you. So if something I say doesn't resonate with you, then change it, fix it however you want. I will not be offended. I just want everybody here to be successful. So I'm going to give you tips that work for me, but feel free in the comments, especially since we have almost 500 people here right now, to, give your tips too. Like, that doesn't work for me, but I love to do this. I will love that. All the resources, all that we can share helps all of us rise and get better. So I'm going to share my iPad screen with you here. This is the download the 2022 writing plan. And you'll find at the beginning is just a little bit of a note from me kind of talking about what we were talking about at the beginning here, like showing up as your best self. And it's really a story here of how for many, many years in my own life, I would try to show up every year. This is going to be the year I write this many books or anything like that. And every year I would fall so far behind that I would have to replan, and then I would fall behind again, and then I would replan. And I couldn't figure out what was wrong. I thought there was something wrong with me. I am the person who is flawed. I am just, I came for your throat. Oh no, Kristen, I'm sorry. I'm the one who's flawed. There's something fundamentally wrong with me. And when I really started to open my eyes to productivity and to really working on myself, I started to understand that there was never anything wrong with me as a person. The problem was the way I was planning, that I was planning for myself to be 100% all the time, go, 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 not even just my best self, but like above my best self. So I would say, like, if I normally would write 1,000 words a day, that would make my yearly plan saying, well, this is the year I'm going to write 2,000 words a day and I'm never going to miss a day. And it would be so incredibly unrealistic. And then I didn't understand why I was always falling behind. So we're going to kind of talk about some of those things. And if you want to read that first little letter, it is a little bit of an encouragement, hopefully, for you. Then what we're going to do next is we're going to start to take a realistic look at your 2022 calendar. So the 2022 calendar that I have for you here is arranged in quarters. So you have one page that's Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4. When you first begin thinking about your schedule for 2022, how much you're going to write, what you're going to write, one of the things that you really need to look at to get a realistic plan is how much time do you actually have to work with? So some of you are going to be fine. You're going to be like, I write all the time. There are writers who do that go to conferences and you still write, or to go on vacation and you still write with your family. So if that's you and that's the way you currently are, then continue to plan for that, because that's just how you are and you do awesome. I personally don't usually write if our family's on vacation. And in fact, I don't write the week before vacation because I'm packing everything. And I don't usually write a few days after because I'm unpacking and doing all the laundry. So that's what I'm talking about when I talk about being realistic. Many people are getting vaccinations right now. And I've seen several times lately that people are like, oh, I had this commitment that I made, but I haven't been feeling great because I got my booster shot, or I got this, or I got COVID, or, whatever. And that's a real reality of what we're all kind of facing right now, is there are some health issues that weren't on the table 3 years ago. So we have to sort of think about those things. Some people here maybe have chronic illness or things that you're constantly thinking about that you never know when it's going to flare up. For me, that has been anxiety this year. I have some days that I wake up feeling great and I can be very productive. And I have other days without any rhyme or reason or trigger that I know of where my anxiety is so high that I just have a hard time producing any work. So when I start to plan my 2022, I have to take that into consideration, not because I'm flawed or because there's something wrong with me, but just because I am a person who is currently having some anxiety and I want to be able to take care of myself. So I hope that as you start to look through your calendar, you can think about those kinds of things, not from a place of I'm flawed or there's something wrong with me, or I really am not going to be my best self if I have to take consideration for, for some of the things like migraines, or, maybe you're caring for someone else and you're a caretaker for someone in your family. Or maybe like me, your housing situation is up in the air. There could be all kinds of things. So that's why I didn't want to use the word limitations, because I don't want you to necessarily think of it as these are my limitations, because that's such a negative connotation word. But I do like that word Sing said about framework. It's like, this is the reality. This is the framework. And I just have to make sure that however I plan this, it's going to fit within this framework. So that's kind of where we are mentally, saying, I'm amazing. I'm doing a great job, but I do have these things that I need to take into consideration in order to make my plan stronger. Because if we don't think those things are important, we all know we get a few days in and then there we are. We're already behind and we're beating ourselves up. Giving yourself that little bit of grace is good. So I feel like this type of planning is all about finding that balance between the grace that you want to give yourself, but also the motivation and excitement for all the things you want to accomplish. And if you can find that place where you get excited and motivated and you create a plan that is really your best foot forward, but also takes into consideration some of the things that might get in the way of your planning, I think that is where your strength is going to be. So the first thing that we do is we look at these calendars. So we have 4 quarters in the year, every year, 3 months each. And we're going to look at these calendars and take into consideration when you already know you have commitments. So if you have this printed out and you're already working on it, then you can start doing this. Maybe I know some people were already working on this morning. I saw in our writing retreat. If you don't have this with you or you don't have the actual download, you can do this in any kind of planner, or you can look on Google Calendar or iCal and you can do that there instead. But basically the first step is to look through your calendar and, take your markers. You can color code the heck out of this if you want to have some real fun with it. I'm like the nerdy person who thinks color coding is fun. And what I love is that I know many of you are like this too. And you take your calendar and you start to mark off days that you're not probably going to be working. So if you've just gone through the HB90 planning process with us last week for the course, you've already done this for Q1, but we're going to take it a step further and go all the way through Q2. So the first step is commitments, vacations, birthdays, things like that. And like I said, if you already plan, you write on vacation and it's just the way you do, you love it. You write on conferences. I know there were several authors at RWA conferences who would get up at 5 a.m. so they could get their 1,000 words in for the day. This is not me. I'm not that person. I can't focus when I've got that other stuff going, but some people do. And there's no right or wrong way. It's just, how are you, right? Hi, Rana. So you've got potentially, so my birthday is the 23rd. So I would go on this calendar and I would mark off the 23rd, and I'm probably not going to work much that weekend on my writing. Now, I say that as a little bit of a caveat because I think that is probably going to end up being our virtual writing retreat weekend. So I might end up joining in, or I might just take the weekend off. I haven't decided. But let's say, it's your birthday, or you have a vacation coming up. Maybe you have a doctor's appointment. Maybe you already know that you have a church commitment every single Wednesday night that's going to keep you from writing. Now, before, what we always did with this is we always just counted the whole day off. But what we started doing this time in HB90 that I think is valuable is we started marking, let's say it's like a Wednesday evening kind of thing, that you have church on Wednesday evenings. You could put like a little slash and just put PM. So you remind yourself that every Wednesday night you don't have evening times to write. So that way, if you have a habit of usually writing, let's say you work a full-time job and you usually write every night from 6 to 8 p.m. That night, you're not going to be able to write every single Wednesday because you have another commitment. So I would just fill up my entire calendar as far as I could, take it month by month with anything you already know. Some people will already have a lot of things they know about. Some people will have no idea. If you have something, let's say, for example, that you've got to take your dad to a doctor's appointment sometime in February, but it hasn't been scheduled yet. You're still waiting to get that schedule. Or it's going to be a recurring thing every month. You're going to have an appointment, but you just don't have the dates yet. Then you could come over here to the side note. This is why I left you a little bit of space over here. And you could write in a note here that says doctor's appointment and like 1, so that there's a 1 day, but it's just not scheduled yet. And basically go through the process of just marking out all of these days. This is a process that I have been doing for a really long time, but I also do like to kind of just shout out that Bria Quinlan is another author who talks about this type of planning, and she calls it calendar math, which I really love. So her name is Bria, Bria, Quinlan, Quinlan. And she writes lots of cool books as well, contemporary romances and things like that. And she talks about this, and I think she might have something up on her website about this as well that goes a little bit more into depth about this type of calendar math. Do you double log your schedule in all your different planners? I don't actually, but you could. For me, I end up using so many different planners. I keep thank you for putting that. I was trying to spell it, but yes, Bria Quinlan. And I think you can just Google her name and you can find her website. And I think she used to have some resources, but I haven't looked recently about talking about calendar math. And she goes a little bit deeper into this. But I think if it depends on your brain and how you like to work. If it's not on every calendar means that you're going to forget it, then I would put it on every single calendar. But I tend to have calendars for different things. So I put this type of thing only on my writing calendar and my editorial calendar. And that's the only places where I mark it. But I will refer back to this download multiple times if I need to. And remember, you don't have to be precious with this. Like, this doesn't have to be exact. Maybe you will end up writing on Friday before your birthday. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to get a realistic idea of what days we're going to be writing. And so you just want to go through very casually and just say, what are the days I don't think I'm going to be able to write? So you've got this, maybe you've got a special plan already set for Valentine's Day. Maybe you've got spring break coming up for this first kind of week in March. And you would be able to go through your whole calendar and start to mark things off where it feels necessary. And like I said, to be extra realistic about it, if you did have this vacation, and you could, of course, you can kind of do this any way you want. So make it as fun as you want. But you could come over here and you could mark what this is. You could also, instead of making these slashes, you could instead make it a line where you put at the top what it is that you're doing. Please excuse my handwriting. I feel like I can never write nicely on an iPad when people are watching me. So you could make it color coded according to whether it's something for your son versus something for yourself versus a writing retreat, whatever. So just feel free to go crazy with it. But I know from experience that if this was a vacation for me, I'm not going to be writing on this day, and I'm probably not going to be writing the few days before that because I'm going to be getting prepared for the trip. And then if we were just coming home from Saturday, it's probably going to take me at least 2 days to recover. So think about those kind of things too, the recover times. And because it's one thing to say, but this time I really do need to get my writing in. I can't afford to take that much time off. That's one thing. But then there's the reality of, are you actually going to come home and write just because you think you need to, or is that going to be hard for you to do? And just think about what that means. And be as realistic as you can. So that's the first step, is going through your entire calendar. You start with Q1, move on to Q2. And of course, the later you get into the year, probably the less things you've already got scheduled. But like I said, you could go ahead and maybe you don't know when this is, but you've got a vacation to see your girlfriends for 3 days. And you could go ahead and kind of tentatively block off which days you thought those were going to be. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's just a matter of taking off the days that you think you will need. And so you'll go through your entire calendar in this way until you get to the end of the year. And then once you have all of those days marked off, you'll find on this particular sheet right here, I ask you, so there's 365 days in 2022. And then you go through and you subtract the number of days that you already have marked off for all those extra commitments and things like this. Now, we're not yet really thinking about days for migraines, buffer days, and things like that. But this is all of your commitments, and you go through and you add them all up. And let's say at the end of it, I had 100 days that I'm not going to be able to write. And again, this is another place where you don't want to compare yourself to other people. Some people are going to be like, I only have 10 that I'm taking off. And some people will be like, it's 210 for me. And that means I only have 150 writing days for the year or whatever. So don't judge, just meet yourself where you are, and it's going to be okay. Trust that you have the time you need to write what you are meant to write this year. So you do this. Obviously, you're not going to be able to get all this done just while we're talking here, but that's the first thing. The next thing that I encourage you to take into consideration is your health and your personal situation with your family or your other commitments, because these are things that might not necessarily go on your schedule, but things that are always coming up and putting you behind. So these are things like, I know there's going to be 3 days a month where I'm out for migraines on average, or I know there's going to be at least 2 days a month that my kids are sick and they're going to need a little extra mommy time, or I know there's going to be at least 1 day a month where I'm just having such bad anxiety that I can't write. So think about those kinds of things. Now, you want to give yourself a little bit of a buffer, but you want to try to make it realistic. Like, don't count that you're not going to work on 20 days out of the month because of whatever, unless that's really how you feel and that feels like the way it's been for you this year. So you have a place to do that down here towards the bottom here. How many days do you estimate you will need to take off from your writing or from editing work for illness, mental health, or other unexpected events? On the lines below, write down how many days and why you need them off. I didn't mention this before with the schedule too, but something that I have to take into consideration. So if you have, I kind of consider heart breathings as sort of like a second job outside of my writing, and that courses and so forth is kind of like a second job for me. So in February, I'll be running my Publish and Thrive course again. And during that time, I don't have as much energy and time to work on my writing because I'm working with my students a little bit more. So that could be something too that you might take into consideration in that first step is, do you have exams? Do you have a full-time job that gets a little bit more stressful, or you have specific times of year where there's bigger projects, or, if you have a side hustle that it's like, oh, we've got this big sale that runs for Black Friday every year, so I can't work during that whole time. So think about those kinds of events and put them all on the calendar as well. So then you take this little section down here at the bottom and you say, how many days do I need to take off for illness, mental health, other unexpected events or family events. And then you just can write down here, you could write down why, just to kind of remind yourself. Yeah, summer vacation, exactly. Summer vacation when the kids are home, that's going to be a very different situation for your writing versus when the kids are in school all day. And it could also be something like you have, maybe you play a local softball or something, and you guys have a season that you go and you play with your team, and that gives you less time to be writing. So really be thinking about those kinds of things, because a lot of times we don't want to take that stuff into consideration, but it really does play or make an impact on our writing. And if you want it to not have an impact on your writing, then you have to make a plan ahead of time. Yeah, exactly. Late December, because the holidays are chaotic. But then maybe, and we'll talk about this on the next page, maybe there's also times of year where you have more time for your writing, like during NaNoWriMo, right? That you make extra time to get that writing in because you like participating in that. Or it could be that you do a writing retreat once a month and you're going to give yourself a little bit of extra time for writing during that. I'm going to be trying something new, which I'll talk about kind of if we have time at the end of the live stream, called Book in a Week, basically, is what I don't know that I'm going to call that, but I'll kind of talk about it in a little bit. So then at the bottom here, you write down the total number of days that you're estimating you want off to step 2. So let's say I saw someone sadly mention endometriosis pain. So I have PCOS too, and I do not have endometriosis, but my sister does. But PCOS is something at least 3 days a month. I have pains that I have a hard time writing. It's easier for me to get video work in or to create downloads and stuff like that, but it's very difficult for me to write. So let's say 3 days a month, and that's what you're going to give yourself. 3 days a month times 12 months is 36 days. So you could estimate or guess. And of course, it's not an exact science, so don't worry about being perfect. Kind of let go of the perfectionism and just say, we're just trying to give best guesses here. So your days remaining from step 1, oh no, I know I already forgot, was 265 for me. So you write in that number from step 1 minus the 36 days or whatever you were taking off for your health. And then you've got some math to do. And of course, I'm going to be like, oh my gosh, somebody tell me what that is. I can't do math in my head. Y'all are going to laugh at me. All right. So, and of course I'm on the, no, that's not right. 229. This is why I need a calculator. So I think 229 is right. I use math a lot in my writing. However, I'm not very good at it when it comes. It's so funny because my son, who's only 9, is such a whiz at math. And yeah, 229. Thank you. He can do all this stuff in his head, and I'm always like still counting on my fingers over here. So that leaves you with 229 days of writing days. And this is going to become important, not just how many days, but also where those days occur. Because when we get into the actual scheduling out deadlines, which days are out are going to be important. So when it comes to your calendar for these extra days, so let's say you've gone through the process and you've marked off specific days you're not going to be working. You can't necessarily mark off what days you're going to have endometriosis or anxiety because you don't know when exactly that's going to come up. So we do need to have kind of an estimate of where those days are coming. So you have a couple of options. I would personally, this is what I tend to do, is I tend to just kind of change to a different color, and I will mark off the first 3 days of the month. So I would go 1, 2, 3. If I was taking off 3 days a month, I would just go ahead and mark off those first 3 a month. And then because this one, I already have 3 days, I would just mark the next 3 available days. Now, I don't know for sure that those are the 3 days, and maybe I won't even need 3 days every single month, or sometimes I'll need 4, but this at least gives me an idea of where they're going to be. So KT says, I generically allow 7 days, sick days per quarter. So if you were doing here, I've done 9, she does 7. So what you could do is you could just take all 7 off the beginning of January, and that will be fine too. Or you can spread them out and say, I'm going to take 2 for each month and then 3 for this last month. And you can mark them at the end of the month, the beginning of the month. It doesn't really matter because right now you're just trying to get kind of an overview of your writing schedule. But when you get to the nitty gritty and you're actually in the month of January, you can be more specific with it when you get to that point. So the next thing you do, once you've got your calendar figured out and you know how many writing days you have and how many days you're taking off and that sort of thing, the next thing that you're going to do is you're going to start to look at your actual writing projects. Now, this is something I don't think we talked about as much last year. So I'm going to kind of make myself a little bit bigger so you can see my face a little bit more. But this is what I would really recommend when you start thinking about your actual projects. Once you have your time figured out, don't just think, how many things can I write? And just what's next on the schedule. It's also important to start thinking about the following things. One, what is your actual strategy? Are you planning to publish these books that you're writing? Are you just backlogging books so that you can rapid release later? Are you planning to publish them right away? Those kind of things are important. So your strategy of what you're going to write. And maybe you don't know 100%. Maybe you're like me, you're on the last book of a series, or maybe you're just getting started as a writer and you haven't yet decided exactly what you're going to do. So this might just be a very loose schedule for you for how many projects you're doing, but you might not know exactly which book it is. And that's fine too. You could just put, random project number 1. But I do encourage you at this stage of it to really be thinking about strategy, especially if you're looking to publish these books yourself and you're self-publishing. Because where I messed up, I feel like I get to impart more knowledge to you all from the mistakes that I've made than anything else. And that is, I started thinking about how many books I could write. And I spent less time thinking about which books I could write. And I thought, as long as I'm producing, it doesn't matter. And then I ended up starting too many series at once. And I didn't see it far enough out into the future to understand that I was getting myself into a really bad situation where I was writing 5 different series at once. Now, for somebody who the most they've ever written in a year is 5 books, if you're writing 5 series, that means only 1 book a year in each series. And that's pushing myself to write a lot of books. And if you are at all familiar with how marketing and so forth works with self-published novels, especially post-KU, it's hard to only have 1 book in a series out a year, and it's very difficult to build. And my career has been suffering in terms of my sales numbers for literally the past 5 years because of this and because of having a baby, which, there's no regrets there. But now is the time to really start thinking not just about what you're writing this year, but where does that take you next year and beyond? And I implore you to try to keep it to 1 genre, 1 series, or 2, maybe 3, unless you already know that you're somebody who writes lots of books. I know that we have several people in this community who can write 12 books a year. But don't hear that and then think, I should be writing 12 books a year. Instead, think, okay, my comfortable pace is 1 book, or I don't even know what my comfortable pace is yet. So I'm just going to develop a consistent writing habit, and we're going to go from there. But meet yourself where you are. And if you find that your max amount of books per year is 2 or 3, like me, that's kind of my average, 2 to 3. Then think about it strategically, not just, oh, I really wanted to write this horror and I'm going to write this young adult and I'm going to write this, thriller, because those 3 things in terms of self-publishing are not going to play very well off of each other. So it's a good idea to already be thinking about your strategy. You would get a lot more out of writing 3 thrillers than you would out of writing 3 very different things. Now, I say this with a bit of a caveat too, and you'll hear about this if you ever have taken my Publish and Thrive course. I never want to tell people to not work on what they love, because I feel like writing what you truly love is one of the most important and most fulfilling things. But if you do want to make money doing this, you do have to take the market into consideration, which does not mean writing to market or writing trends all the time. That is not what I'm talking about. But it just means understanding that writing in a single genre or a single niche for longer periods of time or a single series is going to be more lucrative for most writers than writing 3 separate books in 3 separate genres. But take that with a grain of salt. I just wanted to make sure to mention the strategy part of it because it is actually important. Let's see. I saw an interesting comment here. Dakota said, yeah, but us overproducers are burning ourselves out trying to keep up with our own expectations. And that is true too. I don't want to get so far into it, but I will say that I do have multiple friends who for years were like, I can write 10 books a year. And they thought it was no big deal. And then 3 years and they're so burned out, they're having to change, they're pushing release dates back, they're having to change everything. And I will also say that I have several friends that upped their release schedule to, 10 plus books a year, and they actually started making less money than they were making when they were focusing on a single series and they were taking their time with the books. So it's really just like we do the best we can. We don't have a crystal ball. We can't see the future to know what's the best thing to write. But as you start thinking about what you're going to do with these days that you have, try to make the most of them if you're wanting to build a career out of your writing, because writing 3 different genres, a bunch of different things that aren't related is sometimes going to be harder to make money. So I will just put that there. I feel like we could talk about this forever, but it is important to start thinking about the strategy. Another couple things I want you to think about as we go into the actual project planning part of it is, how do you want your life to feel and to go in terms of working on multiple projects? And I do understand we have we've got over 500 people here. So we have a wide variety of experience. There are self-published authors here. There are trad-pubbed authors here. There are people who have written 100 books, and there's probably people here who haven't yet finished their first book. So just meet yourself where you are and don't judge yourself based on anything I say or anything that you hear. But some of these things you may not have to take into consideration. Do you want to work on multiple projects at once? That's something to think about. Some people do like to work on multiple projects at once. Some people will work. I have multiple friends or have heard of people who will be drafting one book, and they're editing another one. I have a friend that I used to do some collaboration type stuff with, that she was always plotting something and writing something different, so that by the time she got to writing the next book, she already had it fully plotted and it wrote very quickly. And while she was writing that book, she was plotting the next book. So she was always doing both. I have a hard time working on 2 projects at once, but some people can work on multiple. So yeah, Diane says working on first draft of a fantasy, but I'm making notes for a mystery. So think about that. Do you want to be working on multiple stages of the process at the same time? Or do you want to just, I'm going to see this book all the way through, and once it's published or out to query, then I will pick up the next project, and be thinking about how that feels to you. And like I said, you may not know the answer. So this year might be a goal of playing around with that a little bit. Another thing is, do you need time between stages of the process, or do you need time between books? So for example, when you finish a rough draft, do you want to give yourself a little bit of time before you start edits? And what do you want to work on during that time break? Or do you just want to take some time off completely? Once you finish a book and you're about to publish it, do you want to already be working on the next book? Or do you want to wait until all your marketing is done and then start the next book afterward? There's a lot of those kind of things. And like I said, I know that there's some of you that are like, oh, I don't even know. I haven't even finished my first book. So that's totally fine. If you haven't finished your first book, then we'll focus there. KT says, want to, of course. Can, nope, brain melts. Nora Roberts said at an RWA conference once, she was talking about that. And she said she always has good intentions of taking a week or 2 off. And she has this whole list of things she wanted to do when she finished her book. And then she makes it like 2 days before she's already writing the next book. So that's totally fine. But I am, and that's why she's so prolific, right? However, I need time off in between books. I can go straight from rough draft to edits, but I need time. Once a book is published and out in the world, I need a little bit of time, sometimes a month or more, before I can start really thinking about the next book in the series. So just, some of the stuff you will learn, it's important to know when when your brain melts, for sure. um, it's important to know when you need a break. And if you don't know that yet, pay attention to that as you go through the next part. Nora is, I'm sure, high achiever. I am also high achiever, but I am not, I have other things I'm achieving in between. in between. So another thing is, are you going to be working on a single series, or are you going to be working on multiple series? Are you writing standalones? What kind of things do you want to work on this year? Also, what are your release plans? Are you going to self-publish? Are you hoping to query? And while you're querying, are you going to be working on another book? These are all kind of big decisions, which I know you might not be making in this 1 hour or whatever live stream, but it's just things that I want you to take into consideration as you start to plan, because the process of querying agents can sometimes be really emotional. It could be months before you hear anything, or you might hear rejections, or you might get, you might be trying to work on something new when you get a request for a full or some revisions. So those kind of things can affect your writing schedule as well. What is your writing process? Do you plot? How long does it take you to plot? Do you edit quickly, or do you pants the whole thing and then you need extra time for editing? Those kind of things are important. Unicorn says, I can't do marketing and writing at the same time. I'm a hyper-focused monster, and all the marketing and setup tasks in a week burn out every time for a few days after. So that's super important to know. So it's like you can't schedule a writing project during that time, and you need a little bit of time off, but then maybe you're ready after that to start working on your next project. So that kind of stuff to take into consideration, because I used to do this kind of thing. So when I would schedule out this type of projects, just to give you a little bit of an idea, let me go to a sheet that doesn't have anything written on it. I would do something along the lines of this. I would say, book one, I'm going to start it here. I'm going to write 3,000 words a day, and I'm going to write every single day. And this would be my schedule. It's like, I'm going to take 2 weeks to write the whole book, right? And then I would imagine, okay, then I'm going to start editing book one and plotting the next book at the same time. And I would just be like trying to work on multiple things all at once, and trying to like push myself, because I had such a desire to write more books in a year. And what ended up happening every single time is I would get about to day 4 and I would already be so far behind and so upset about my schedule that I was just like sitting on the couch eating Oreos for 2 weeks. So get to know your process. And if you don't know your process yet, then pay attention to your process this year and think of it kind of like a fun experiment. I'm discovering my process, and this is going to be really fun, instead of putting stress into it. So I'm going to have to factor in time to plan the plan. Yes, always. But it is important to take the time to plan. Nothing wrong with Oreos. Yes. Unless you're supposed to be writing, you should be eating Oreos while you write. Okay, so those are some things to take into consideration. Another thing to take into consideration is how fast do you write, and how much do you want to write per session. So before we get into these final pages, start thinking about that as well, because this is another part where math comes into play. And we've talked about this some during Preptober, if you were around for that, but this is important in this next stage as well, that you can really use math to help you here. There is, in the resource library, if you haven't done it before, there is a word sprint challenge. And that word sprint challenge, if you like to write in Pomodoro sprints or word sprints, will be a 5-day challenge that will walk you through a process of finding your kind of sweet spot when it comes to the time of day you write, how long you need to sprint to have your best sprints. Some of you here maybe don't write in sprints at all, that you like to write in long chunks of time, like I write 2 hours at a time. There is no right or wrong. It's just whatever you like to do. But you can take that information, whether it's 20-minute sprints or it's 2-hour long chunks, And you can say in a single session or a single sprint, I write on average X amount of words. And if you don't know the answer to that, then you can take some time before the start of the year, and it literally would take you 5 days to work through that. Thank you, Jamie. I appreciate it. It'll take you 5 days to work through that you say, for me, for example, 25 minutes is my sweet spot, and my average is 650 words per sprint. So if you have that amount of information, the amount of time and the average words per sprint, or you could say, I like to write for 2 hours at a time, and I tend to write 1,000 words in 2 hours, or 2,000 words in 2 hours. If you have that information, then all you need to know in addition to that is about how long do you estimate your writing project is going to be. So let's say that you have a writing project that you estimate is going to be 100,000 words. If you write 1,000 words per hour, like you like to write in a long session of an hour, then you know you're going to need 100 hour-long sessions to write your rough draft. And that's just if you're writing. So you can use that type of estimates and your average to create an idea of how many days it's going to take you to write your book. And of course, we're not talking about just days in a row. We're talking about days that you're writing according to your calendar. Hi, Carolina. Hello, hello. So now we move to these final pages. So if you go to this estimating your time page, I kind of explain that process. If that went over your head a little bit or you weren't fully able to listen, that gives you an idea of the averages there. Then we're going to move on to the heart of the workbook, which is your writing projects. Now, I have given you space here to have at least 9 projects. Now, some people are going to be like, haha, like me, no way I'm doing 9 writing projects. But this, of course, includes any short stories you're writing, or cookies or lead magnets, or, anything like that you can add in here. Some of you will go, 9 is not enough for me. I need more space. So it doesn't really matter which you are, just use what feels good to you and keep moving. But how you are meant to use these sheets is you've got a spot here to say, project number 1. And this is where your strategy kind of comes in, and say, project number 1 is going to be, let's say it was book 1 of your horror series. Anybody here write horror? You don't even have to have a title. You can just call it book 1 horror. On this side, on the left side, you have a space to write down, or there's an idea here of each stage of the process. Now, you may just go over to this plot right here and put a big old mark through it, because maybe you don't plot or outline, and that's totally fine. I did not put it there to insinuate that you need to, because I know that many people do not, and they are amazing writers. So don't feel that you need to plot. You can just mark that out and say 0 days needed to plot. Or if you're somebody who is really a pantser, but you do like to have kind of a rough outline, or you like to do some character sketches, then you can put in here how many days you think it'll take you to do that. Maybe it takes you 5 days to do that. If you're like me, plotting takes a while. Romance horror. Woo, that sounds good to me. I like that idea. Then you estimate how long it's going to take you to do your rough draft. And again, I want you to think through this and think, do I need days in between as well? So if you've done your plot, are you usually ready to jump straight into your rough draft? Do you plot and rough draft simultaneously? So take that into consideration, because if you say it takes me 5 days to plot, but then I need a good 2 days break before I'm ready, then I would write a +2 so that it's really going to be 7 full days before you get to your rough draft. Then on your rough draft here, this is where you can use that math. So let's say you write 100,000 words. You think this is going to be a 100,000 word project. And if you wanted to, you could put up here your estimate of how many words you think it's going to be. And you can take your average writing, and then like your average writing per session, per sprint, or per session, and divide it. So you would take 100,000 divided by, just for easy math, we'll say 1,000. If you write 1,000 an hour, then you will know that you need 100 writing sessions. And let's say you're planning to write 2 hours a day. So you would take those 100 sessions divided by 2, because you're going to do 2 of them a day. And that would mean that you would need 50 days. Oops, wrong spot. You would need 50 days to complete your rough draft. And that's 50 writing days, not just 50 calendar days, which is important. Then you have edits. And I will say, okay, somebody just said, oh, all words, LOL, can never plan out exactly how a project is going to be. So don't think that just because you don't know how long your projects are, that you can't use this system. You can just estimate how long you think it'll take you to write it. So you could, if you really don't want to use that math because you just don't even know, but hey, I'm going to give myself 60 days to write it. Then you just write down 60 and let it go at that. So don't feel like you have to be precious with it. Just do the best you can with it. Question: how many words was your first Demons book and Deep Dark Secrets? Working on my first book, and I can't estimate words or time yet. So my first Demons book was just under 50,000 words. So it's a really short book. And Deep Dark Secrets is almost 90,000 words. So that's the first, well, it was going to be the first book in my Spirit Walker series, but now it's going to be a standalone. So that they're very different in terms of how long they were, but that first Demons book was really short. Yes. Sorry, KT. Now I've started thinking in task blocks. My brain is breaking again. So if you've already been thinking in task blocks, then change that word days and move it to task blocks. Just mark out the word days and write task blocks and use that instead. That's probably what I'm going to be doing. So that, oh, do you mean I sent you an email about my HB90 purchase? You mean the undated planner? I will get the rest of those out today. I think I have 4 or 5 emails about that. So thank you for the reminder. So Cindy says she knows a 70,000 word book takes me about 60 hours of actual writing, but that doesn't include plotting. So in that case, if you know about how many hours you need, then you just would say, how many hours per day do I plan to write? And then give yourself that many days, right? So this is not going to be an exact science, and it's going to be different for everybody. So you could work, if you're doing HB90, we're working in task blocks, which is 30-minute increments. So in that case, instead of saying 50 days, for me, I would say I need 100 task blocks, and you can just write it just like that. But I know some people here do not do 90-day HB90. So either way. Same thing with edits. Now, if you have not yet gotten to the process of editing your book, and we're going to go over the top of the hour, but if you have to go, you can always come back to watch the replay later. If you have never gotten to the editing stage before, something that you might want to think about is, do you want to give yourself a certain number of days between your rough draft and your edits? You may want to set your rough draft aside for a month and be plotting project 2. So these are important things to talk about and to think about with yourself as you go through this process. And that's one of the reasons why it's difficult to kind of teach it is exactly this is the way it's going to be, because every single person here might have a different process. And so it's important to just understand that your process might be different from mine. You may need to make yourself a totally different type of sheet, but hopefully this will at least give you some ideas and a jumping off point for what might work for you. So don't feel like you have to do it exactly like me. This is a good question. How do you account for the time your book is with an editor and you want to switch to another project during this time? This is tricky, and it's particularly tricky if you're traditionally published, because you don't always know when your edits are coming back. At least when you're self-published, you usually have an agreement of how long it's going to take them. Like, oh, it's going to take you 3 weeks and I'll get it back at that point, or a month, or whatever it is. But with TradPub, you don't always know when you're getting them back. So what I would say is, because you make a decision, especially if you're TradPub, when you get your edits back, usually they're expecting you to kind of drop what you're working on and work on those edits for most relationships there. So in some ways, it's just that when you start project 2, you can plan it the same way that we're talking about, that you say this many days for plot, this many days for rough draft, but make a note somewhere in this project 2 here that says, like maybe down here at the bottom, that says something like plan for edits plan for 2 weeks edits on book 1. So you kind of work that time into your schedule, and you don't know at which point you'll be getting those back. It might come when you're in the middle of the rough draft. It might be coming at the, when you're already finished with the book. But whenever you get it back, just go ahead and be planning on your schedule. And I'm going to show you in just a minute how to move this to your calendar, that you're going to need to also plan in that editing time to interrupt that project at some point during the project. So that way, let's say your project 2 was supposed to start on February 1st, and normally you would only need 60 days to finish it. You're going to give yourself 60 days plus 14, because you're going to estimate that editing for the next project or for the previous project is going to happen in the middle. So it just is going to elongate the amount of time you're working on project 2, if that makes sense. That's the way I would do it, because I think that otherwise you just kind of get completely off schedule. But going back up to this, let's say you had 100 task blocks or you needed 50 days, whichever way you wanted to do it. I'll just write a little thing there. And then let's say you also thought you need at least a week off. So I'm going to write plus 1 week. Then edits. Let's just say that you're somebody who doesn't need a lot of time for edits, and you're only going to take 10 days, or you're going to take, let's say, 30 task blocks. And again, if you don't know what I'm talking about with task blocks, it's more for HB90 people. Publishing. This is where it comes in. Do you want to be publishing the book while you're working on something else, or do you need to have just focus only on publishing? Or are you not even at that stage? You're getting an agent, you want to traditionally publish, or you're going to write 5 books before you rapid release them all. So really think about that and make as many notes on here as you need to. For me, the publishing part of the process, in terms of like marketing and publishing and stuff like that, I would say I usually count about 7 days for that, but I can be plotting while I'm doing that. So you could just make yourself a note and say, also plotting book 2 at the same time, and just make as many notes as you need to. Maya says, do you transfer and block all this in your official calendar? I don't transfer all of this into my official calendar, but I do have, actually, I should make this, I made this available to my HB90 students, but I should make it available to all of you too. So look for that maybe in the next email I send, or I'll put it on the video after it's done. I actually have a Google spreadsheet that has the whole year. It's not an official calendar. It's more of a spreadsheet, and I will go in and I will block stuff off there, and then I will move it around. Or I have in the past sometimes put all these deadlines of when I wanted to start rough draft, when I wanted to start the edits and all of that into my Google Calendar. But that didn't work great for me in Google Calendar to put the whole year in, because I ended up getting behind, and then I had such a hard time. So this year, we'll see. This year, hopefully, it's going to be a little bit better in terms of sticking to it, because I'm trying to be even more realistic, but we'll see how it goes. So once you have that first project kind of out and about, maybe you've got a couple planned out, then we can start putting it on a calendar. So I'm going to go back to, sorry to move this so quickly, but we're going to go back to this original January date. And this is where you're going to take a look at the whole calendar, and you're going to say, okay, I can't start writing until the 4th because I have these other days that are off. And in our first example, we said we needed, I think it was 5 days. Let me see if I can just go quickly from this way. So I need 7 days, 5 days plus 2 days break for my plot. And then I need 50 days for writing. So this is what that would look like for me on my calendar. And I do like to use a specific color code. So let's say book 1 in my series is going to be this purple color. So I'm going to write it over here, and I'm going to remind myself of this color code, that it's going to be book 1 is purple. And I would actually say, like here on the 4th, I would put plot book 1. So I would know this is where it begins. Sorry, I know that's a little bit small. It's just chicken scratch. I apologize. It's like all these amazing YouTubers who have this awesome handwriting and stuff. And I'm over here like chicken scratching on the screen. So you have plot book 1, and then I would count out the day. So I would say this is day 1, day 2, 3, 4, 5. Then remember, I'm going to give myself 2 days of break. And then I'm going to write for 50 days. Now, of course, you would also want to look in here and see if I didn't mention this at the beginning, which I should have, is, for you, are Saturdays and Sundays writing days, or do you have days of the week where you're just not writing at all? Like maybe every Friday is a break day, or maybe every Sunday is a break day for you and you're taking Sundays off. If that was the case, then that should have been part of that first part of the process where you're going to mark off all the Sundays, and I should have mentioned that before and I forgot. So think about what are your writing days too. For me, I count almost every day as a writing day. But that's just me. I work every day. So you've got those 5 days plus the 2 break days. Then on the 11th, you're going to start writing. And you need 50 days to start writing. And what you could do too is you could actually go over here. And if you wanted to make this a little bit more clear, you could say like 1/4 to 1/8 is plot. And then January 11th, 2, and now we got to count the days. So we have 50 days of writing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10. And then we skip these 3 days because those are non-writing days. And then we say 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 30, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then I skip all the way here, 8, 9, 40. Is that right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I think that was right. Excuse me. You get the idea, even if I did it wrong. But I'm only counting. So this isn't 50 calendar days. I'm only counting 50 days of writing days, which means I have to skip all this vacation time, all this birthday time, all this prep time. And that brings me down to March 23rd. Finishing the book. So this is the writing of the rough draft. And that's the kind of thing that you're going to do. Now, if you're working with task blocks, you're just going to need to be a little bit more specific. So if you're working with task blocks, I have mine over here. Let me make myself a little bit bigger. So if you're working with task blocks in the HB90 system, you would pull out this type of calendar here and you would see how many task blocks you have per day. And instead of counting days, you would go through and count task blocks until you got to 100 task blocks. So instead of saying 50 days on the calendar, I would actually compare this calendar to that quarterly calendar. And I would say, okay, I have 3 writing blocks here, 3 here, 4 here. And you would just count until you got to 100. And then that would be your number of task blocks. So hopefully that makes sense. So that is how I would do it. And I would actually go through and mark my entire calendar. Once you get to that next stage, then you've got the writing of the rough draft. And then you said you needed a week off. So you're going to take that color and you're going to mark off that next week because you need that week off before you start edits. And then you're going to circle March 30th and you're going to say, this is where my edits begin. Now, you would go through every single project like that and schedule it there. Now, here's the kicker. If you plan to work on multiple projects at once, this is where the color code would really come in handy. So let me pick a color that's going to really stand out against that purple. Maybe we'll do a bright yellow. We'll see how that shows up. But if you were simultaneously going to start working on the plot of book 2 while you were editing book 1, then down here where you get to this edits down here, you might also say, okay, so maybe you give yourself until Monday and you say on Monday, does that even show up? Yeah, pretty well. You're going to start book 2. Not terribly well, but it's okay. You're going to start book 2 plot but at the same time, you're continuing to work on book one edits. And so when you start doing this, it's a really good idea to what I find to be best, and especially if you are using an iPad, there is a thing that allows you to make straight lines, which I am not using, but you could make straight lines for yourself where you say, these there, haha, see how pretty that looks when you turn that feature on. But you could have like one line that's purple for book one, and then you have a separate line that is yellow for book two, and they're going simultaneous to each other. So that way later when you look at your schedule, you'll be able to see the fact that you're working on multiple projects at once. And that way you've kind of given each of your projects a color code. And I find that to be helpful. And that is basically the process that you follow, one project after another. But the main thing I find is asking yourself those questions of, am I going to be working on multiple projects at once, or am I only going to work on one at a time? Do I need time in between? And then here's another thing. And I'm going to say this to whoever needs to hear it. Some of you who do this are going to go back to this sheet here, and you're going to see this realistic schedule written out, and you're going to circle this day down here in March, and you're going to panic, and you're going to say, I have to finish this book before March. This isn't possible. Like this book needs to be done by February 1st. And this is like story of my life. So I'm saying this, I'm reaching out to all of those hardies out there who are like me, who feel like you're always running out of time. And you're going to see that and you're going to go, oh my gosh, I got to write this book faster. And then you're going to potentially feel, what's the word? Tempted. Tempted is a good word. You're going to feel tempted to go back and plan to write more or to take less time off. So it's going to make you want to go, well, you know what? I'm going to race these 3 days. I can write while I've got PCOS. It's totally fine. And you know what? I think I will write on my birthday. It's going to be fine. I can do it this time. Just this year, I'm going to write on my birthday. It's going to be fine. And then you think, okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to shift this realistic schedule, and I'm going to say that I'm going to finish this book before we go on vacation. I'm going to finish on the 25th. So now you've basically just pushed your timeline up a month. And if you do that, and then you give yourself 9 other projects this year, or 2 or 3 other projects this year, and you are expecting, it's like a domino effect, that you're expecting that you're going to be able to get this book done faster than ever so that you can get the next book done, and you treat your whole schedule like this. Let me tell you what's going to happen every single time for the majority of us. What's going to happen is you're still not going to finish that book on time. And instead of enjoying the time that you have and enjoying the writing process and feeling excited about what you're doing and that you're on time, you're going to feel panicked the whole way through that February. And you're going to be looking at that vacation coming up, and you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I'm a failure. Here I go again. I am not getting this done. My whole career is going to fall apart. And in fact, this whole schedule that I spent all this time working on is going to fall apart. And maybe you're going to be able to actually pull it out, and you're going to get the book done on February 25th. But you're going to be burned out. You're going to be, completely spent and exhausted. Maybe the book itself suffers because you pushed yourself too hard. Maybe your family suffers. Maybe your joy suffers to some degree. Now, I know that some of you might be listening to this and you might be saying, but Sarah, I got to feed my family. I got to pay the bills. I have to get these books done as quickly as I can. And if that is the case, then I encourage you to find ways in your schedule to continue to support yourself and your mental health at every single step of the way, and to take as much other things off your plate so that you can have a more realistic schedule here, and to take care of your health better if you need to get anxiety medication if you need to, whatever it is that you need to do to support your mental health so that you do not burn out by trying to push yourself a little bit hard. But I know that we're going to have deadlines, but where burnout comes from is when we constantly renegotiate our schedule to try to be better. Oh no, it can't take me that long. I got to get faster. I got to get faster. And we do it over and over again throughout an entire year. And then before you know it, you're with me sitting on the couch, eating Oreos, watching Investigation Discovery for literally 6 months because you can't get yourself off the couch. And it's so, so important to be taking care of yourself because we are not superhuman. And I know that there's a financial factor to writing. I know that there's a feeling inside some of us that I'm already way behind. I'm just getting started at 55, or I'm just, I really want to be able to quit my job. There are important things to think about in our real life that we want to change. But I promise you, the more realistic you are and the more focused you get on things that are important, instead of trying to do it all and burning yourself out, the better off you're going to be and the faster you're going to make progress. I promise you, because exactly what KT just said. Yep. Burnout killed me November 2020 through July 2021. That's 7-8 months of burnout, right? I have done the same thing. Whereas like during those 8 months, you could have finished an extra book or two, but you got to give yourself that grace mixed with the passion to keep working when you can. That's my best advice to you. So I never get to the second draft, so I don't know. Hope. It's good to see you here. Anyone have an average of number of days to edit a rough draft? What I tend to say is, if you don't know an average for your number of days to edit your rough draft, to plan for it to take as long as it took you to write your rough draft, until you get to that point and you can say whether or not it took you that long or not. But I tend to say if it took you 50 days to write the book, it's going to take you at least 50 days to edit it. So, that's a good way to think about it. Renee is appreciating that I actually turned on the line straightener. I did eventually. I have proof of straight lines. And you may find that you want to print out these calendars multiple times and you want to go through with your highlighters and, those kind of things. Yeah. So I see just getting started at 61, or this is how I feel at 55. And the hard thing is that sometimes we can feel that way and we're 35 and we still feel like we're running out of time. And it's like, if you only knew how much time you actually have. And, it's that balance between trying to make the most of our lives, but not taking away our own joy by pushing ourselves too hard along the way. And, it's going to be good. Yes, this is a good recommendation, folks. In Burnout, look for the work by Becca Syme. This is her specialty. Becca is an angel on this earth, and I love and adore her, and her courses are life-changing as well. And she has some really good YouTube stuff out here, and she's just all around amazing person, but she does a lot of work with burnout and she can really help you. She has a book called Dear Writer, You Need to Quit that I would highly recommend picking up and checking out her YouTube stuff. But in the end, no matter when you're starting, no matter how old you are or how much you feel like you're already behind or you haven't done enough or you're not putting enough in, I promise you that you can't change it, and that you have this desire in you for a reason, and it's going to be okay. So start where you are, accept where you are, embrace it, and enjoy it. I mean, gosh, starting writing at 60 years old means that you're starting from a place of maturity and life experiences that so many people don't understand, right? So you're going to be able to put so much of your own experience and life into it. And maybe starting later in life means that you don't have like a 2-year-old running around. Some of you may still, but maybe that means you have more time in your life to learn and to write, and you're not behind. I promise you. This is why I put in the actual workbook here. Let me see if I can find the page. I know I talk about Amber a lot, but Amber is my business guru, my good friend, Amber McHugh. She says this all the time. You are right on time. And she actually is sending me a hat that says right on time. And I'm so excited. It's my little Christmas gift from Amber. But you are right on time. You are right where you're meant to be. And you do not have to push yourself to an unhealthy level to get these books done. And in fact, you don't have to publish 15 books a year to be successful. You need to publish and write at the speed that makes you happy, but you do need to get started. You do need to take action. And I saw someone earlier in the live stream that said, I could plan and plan all day or years, but then I never follow through. And that is something super important. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that on this channel at the beginning of the year. I'm going to do an entire series on following through with your plans. And we do talk about this in HB 92. So if you are in that course, go revisit those follow through videos. There are tips and tricks, but part of it is just making that commitment to yourself and saying, part of follow through, first of all, is creating a realistic plan. Yes, I need to talk about that before we go to. Part of it is of following through is creating a realistic plan, because when you build positive momentum and you show up for yourself, you want to keep showing up for yourself. So that's part of it, is creating this plan in this way will help you follow through. Whereas planning the way that I was just talking about, where you like push yourself to deadlines that aren't realistic, that's where you can't follow through. It's impossible to begin with. You're just setting yourself up for failure. Another part of following through is making that commitment to yourself and saying, I'm going to do this imperfectly, but I'm going to show up. I set 100 task blocks to get this done. I'm going to do 2 a day. I'm going to sit down and do 2 writing sprints a day, and nobody's going to stop me. Yes, we talk about this in HB 90. You cannot be late for your destiny. What is meant for you is going to be for you. And I truly believe that. You just have to start taking those baby steps in the right direction. It's important. Yes. Well, this is a good point too. Speak with someone to make sure you don't have ADHD. That can hinder you from finishing. So often I think we put the blame on ourselves, and we say there's something wrong with me. I'm planning wrong. I'm doing it wrong. I'm flawed. But actually sometimes there are issues that you need support with. So that's important too. Don't forget that, it's not your fault. There could also be other factors at play, and you just need the right support behind you. And then you're going to flourish and thrive. So I'm going to talk briefly. Okay. I will answer this question only by saying I have no idea. How do you follow through when you have a co-author and can't write ahead? I honestly do not have any good advice for that. But if anybody has good advice and has worked with a co-author, I have never worked with a co-author. I've collabed with people on series, but we never wrote the same books together. I don't know. That's really hard. I would guess that you would need to sit down with them and try to come up with a schedule, and just have a schedule there with Google or whatever that says, this is when my chapters are due, and this is when your chapters are due. But man, it's hard when you're working with somebody else, because maybe they're not going to follow through too. I don't know. I'm too much of a control freak to write a book with someone else. Okay. So you obviously can then go through the rest of, Courtney Project works with a co-author, and she talks about it. So go check out the Courtney Project here on YouTube. So you've got space to do up to 9 projects here. And if you want to use them all, go for it. If you need more, just print out that page again and just white out the numbers and add more. If you don't use as many, then don't worry about using as many. But I did want to talk to you a little bit about some adjustments that I'm going to make to my schedule, and then we'll head out. But if you have any more questions, let me know. I'll hang out for a little bit longer since we have such a good crowd here. I should have just scheduled it to be a 2-hour live anyway. I think it was last time. It was quite long. So I am going to be doing something a little bit different next year, and I am going to be doing a game board strategy. This is something else that I've talked about before very briefly, but I didn't get a chance to implement it the way that I wanted. And this is something that comes from the brilliant business mind of Amber McHugh. A game board strategy, and this might be something you would consider if you, like me, aren't always able to hit your deadlines. Game board strategy is an idea that you will have the projects listed out in the order that you want to work on them, kind of like you're moving your pieces around a game board, and you say, okay, You may not know when each project starts and finishes, but you know which order you're doing things in. And that's all you know. And that's what I'm going to be working with this year. I'm not going to set deadlines or pre-orders or anything like that for myself, because it was causing me too much anxiety last year. And so I'm going to give myself that grace of like, I'm not setting a deadline for when this book has to be finished, but I'm going to consistently show up for myself. But I know that each stage that I finish triggers another stage. And so what I've done is I've gone through, and I can do a whole video on this if you guys are interested, once I have it all figured out and like in a pretty little planner. But the idea is that I know the order of operations. So I'm going to plot. And when the plot is done, then I'm going to write the rough draft. When the rough draft is done, I'm going to make sure the cover art is done. So it's kind of like each little thing, like a little dominoes. When I get to this point, it triggers something else. So when I get to the end of the rough draft, it triggers my marketing. It triggers teasers starting to go up. It triggers my editing. It triggers my editor getting a notification. And I have all of these different things that will be triggered by finishing this. Then at that point, I will also know when, it'll trigger me setting a release date for the book and so forth. Then I also will know that finishing this book, whenever that happens, be it February or June, will trigger me beginning to plot the next book in my which is key series or whatever. And that way I'm not putting, I think that this will work for those of us who have a lot of anxiety issues or who just don't know how long a book is going to take you. Some people are really good about saying, I can write a chapter a day. I finish a book in this many weeks. And it's like routine. Some of us, the plotting goes crazy. It's like for me, writing 4 points of view or even 8 points of view in one of my series, I just don't know how long it's going to take me. And the more I try to fit myself into a box of saying this book has to be done by March 3rd, the more I resist sitting down to write. So this year I'm going to try 2 things to help support me. One being the game board strategy. I have not set it up digitally. It's been something I've just been writing in my planner, what the steps are going to be, but I'm hoping to put it into Notion so that I can check mark those things. So once I get it into Notion, I will definitely share that with you. And if I can create a template, I can give you that. So do you have any good resources about book launches? I took Publish and Thrive, but I can't remember. So there are some resources in there, like a book launch checklist for you inside Publish and Thrive, but we can send me an email and we can talk more about launch ideas if you want. So yeah, it's that idea of knowing the order things are going to happen, but not necessarily giving yourself a deadline. But you also want to be careful that you don't just like let it take you 2 years to write it because you never sit down to write. I'm still going to have a plan of how much time I want to spend every day. But I know that I can't always control whether a story comes together fast enough, but I'm going to put the time in and I'm going to commit to myself. So that's one thing, is the game board strategy. The other piece of it is, and I see this question, I'm going to put it up so that I don't forget to answer it. The other piece of it is what I was saying is book in a week. And I was talking about this a little bit on the live stream for the writing retreat. I tend to be a binge writer. I like to spend months plotting, thinking through things. And then when I am ready to write, I like to, this is also words from Becca Syme. I like to portal in as if I'm stepping into the story and just live there. And I can sometimes go on a writing retreat and write 30 or 40,000 words in a weekend because I've done all this pre-work and my brain just sort of focuses in, and it has to do with my personality. It doesn't mean I'm better than anyone else or worse than anyone else. It's just some people are binge writers and some people, binge writers unite. And I actually did not talk about this for a long time because I was nervous of how it would make other people feel, or nervous to admit that I was thinking people would think my books must suck if I wrote them really fast or something. But it's like they don't actually come together super fast because I need time on the other side to like edit and that sort of thing. But I have like my biggest day ever, I wrote 27,000 words in a day. And I, of course, had to edit the crap out of those words, but I do like to binge write. It's really fun for me. And so Becca Syme and I talked at Nink this year about me setting up a schedule where I set up 1 week a month where I go away from the house, not for a whole week because I couldn't leave Evie for that long, but maybe for 2 nights to a hotel or to a friend's house, or I set up a situation in our home where everybody knows this is a drafting week for me. So George is going to take on more of the responsibilities. He's going to do all the cooking. He's going to help take care of the kids. Maybe we set up extra play dates that week. And I am going to basically take the week to write. And that's going to be my book in a week. I may not be able to write an 80,000 word book, but I bet you I can write at least 50 to 60,000 words in a week. And that I think is going to support my mental health more than trying to write 1,000 words a day, because I always get down on myself because I just don't feel like writing every day. But then when I get into a place where I'm excited to write, I can just, I have no limit. I can just write and write and write all day. And I really like it. So I think part of the lesson here is to, Rana says thud. I don't know if that's because of how much I said I was writing. Oh, I keep losing this comment. Sometimes I hesitate to discuss it because I don't want somebody else to be like, oh my God, I should be writing 27,000 words a day or whatever. That's not what I'm saying. It's just a matter of embracing how you are. And Joanne, I did actually sign up for the Strengths for Writers class, but I haven't finished it yet. But I've been talking to Becca a lot. We've been texting each other a few times. And she has been still kind of coaching me, even though I haven't finished the course. But I am going to finish it before the beginning of the year because I feel like it's going to super help me. And that is some of the work that Becca Syme does. Is she is certified Clifton Strength, which is one of those tests that you can take where you find out a little bit more about, well, a lot more about your personality. And then you can learn to lean into your strengths instead of working against yourself. So that's kind of my theme for 2022, is learning to work with myself and follow my instincts there. So I am going to plot. And I'm actually going to have weeks where I binge my heart breathings videos in a way. I'm going to batch them. And then I'm going to have weeks where I batch my writing. And I think that's going to help me. So to answer Lauren's question, how are you using your HB90 system with that method of planning when it comes to goals and scheduling? So the way that I am doing that, this feels so extra, but I am creating my task block schedule and I'm doing 3 of them. So this is my normal week. So this is on a week when I am not drafting and I'm not doing videos. So this is me like on a normal week. And there is a lot of time here for self-care. And I even specifically have gaming and reading time for hours a day. So it's a lot of self-care, a lot of mental health, a lot of exercise and yoga and that sort of thing. And then the rest of it is just kind of like live streams like this, or checking email, taking care of my students in my course, answering those kind of things. Then I have a sample week 2, and this is my drafting week. And you can see how much of it is writing time. So on my drafting weeks, I won't do any heart breathings work. Once I get my full-time assistant in, which hopefully will be towards the beginning of the year, I'm not even going to plan to check email, and I will just let everybody in my community know this is a drafting week for me. And I'm not going to be checking emails or doing anything. My assistant will do that, and I'm going to be writing all week. Then I haven't finished it yet, but I'm going to create a 3rd task block schedule that is specifically for my batching weeks, where I'm hoping to get between 8 and 10 heart breathings YouTube videos done in a week. And I'm also going to be hiring somebody to help me do my video edits. So this next year is going to be all about focusing. Somebody else said something earlier too about how they just really focus in. And that's the way I am. Once I'm focused on something, I could do that same activity for a really long time. And I work better doing that focus rather than, well, I don't have an assistant yet, but she will be coming in. He or she will be coming in. We're drawing this in. So if this is happening at the beginning of the year, and it will be my first full-time employee. And I'm really excited about that because I know I'm ready for that. Would you be willing to share the writing week schedule? Yeah, I can put it on a screenshot on my Instagram or something like that if you want to go check that out at Heart Breathings. So I'm creating 3 schedules. And then what I'm doing is I'm going back to those quarterly. So if you're in HB90, you know that we have a schedule that looks similar to this, where you plan out how many task blocks you're going to have per week. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to designate each week as either being a batch week for heart breathings, a drafting week, which is book in a week, like I was talking about, and then or if it's going to be a quote unquote normal week. And that will tell me how the like how many task blocks I have per goal during that week. And I know that this part might be going over the heads of anybody who has not taken HB90 or learned the new task block system, but that's how I'm working it this time. And it's going to be an experiment for me. And if it works, I will definitely be sharing it in a video and kind of letting you guys know. Listen, this year, 2022 has been a level up year for me. It's kind of like baptism by fire, as they would say. I have really learned a lot about myself, and I have overcome some really tough things this year, and I am ready for the level up. It is scary. It is hard. I feel like every time you go up, level up in your life, you go through a hard time to get there, kind of like a gatekeeper, like our characters go through, but I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm hiring an assistant. I might be hiring 2 people. And this year was my best year in terms of my income, not necessarily for my book sales, but across all of my income. And I feel like, I'm ready to move to that next stage in my life. And I want to serve my community even more. I feel like this community of Hardies is just getting, even my Sarra Cannon communities, which includes some of the Hardies, it's like the community is becoming more and more solid. And I feel like it's becoming more and more of a place where people really feel uplifted. And I want to really lean into that. So if there's other ways that you can think of that I can support you, or that we can do even more on this channel, like maybe monthly live streams like this, where we do like a masterclass or something, let me know. I'm all about coming up with ideas for next year. But that is kind of my strategy for next year, is leaning into what I know about myself instead of trying to be like other people and comparing myself to other people. Because I think that's where this comes from, of this feeling of I must write 1,000 words a day, because everybody says that to be a writer, you need to sit down every single day, get your butt in the chair and get working, whether you feel like it or not. And so I've always tried to fit into that. And I just am going to stop doing that. This next quarter is going to be all about, I'm going to embrace who I am and my authentic self, even if that's not the same as everyone else. Taryn, I do not have anything out there about my different streams of income, but at this point, I think I have 7 different streams of income. And then my husband this year has added a stream of income because he has Roblox games that he's been developing that have started making money this year. So it's all of that kind of begins to sort of add up. But if you guys would like to see a video on that, I would love to share some of those things. I think it can be really good for authors to have, especially if you're self-published, to have multiple streams of income, just because sales are going to always do this. Like I've sold over 750,000 books in my career, but this past year I didn't sell 50,000 books. And that's okay. It's all good. I've had some years where I sold 100,000 books. I'm not even close to that this year, but maybe next year will be twice as good. So it's good to have that multiple streams of income so you can kind of support yourself when the sales are low. So yeah, maybe lots of people would like to see that. I could do that. So then you definitely need a spreadsheet for those income streams. Yeah. This is why I'm also hiring a bookkeeper. This is another thing. My accountant will become my bookkeeper. He's getting set up. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for the congratulations to George. He's been teaching himself how to program Roblox games for years, and he finally has a hit on his hands and he is very excited about it. It's doing very well. So yeah, this year has been brutal for a lot of authors. And to be honest, ever since Kindle Unlimited was put out there, has been hard for a lot of authors. And there's always factors. You just never know what's going to affect it. And you can have a series that does really well and your next one completely bombs, and it's just part of it. But that's why I say to really start thinking about your strategy when you're planning out these projects, because it's this balance. We all want to be able to write exactly what we want. And I want that for you, for sure. I want you to be able to write exactly what you want, but it is one of those things where if you want to make a living doing this, it's so important that you really think ahead to your strategy of publishing the same series or publishing things that the readers who love this will also love this. And, shameless plug, if you aren't sure what that looks like for you, definitely think about coming to join the Publish and Thrive course, which will be coming up in February. I had originally said that the price would be going up this time, but it's not going to be going up. So yay for anybody who wanted to get in one last time at the lower price point, just because I am not going to be able to re-record the course while we're in temporary housing. So you'll get one more shot at a lower price point, and then the price will go up in August when I re-record the course. And it will be going from a 5-week course to a 6-week course in August. So hopefully by then, fingers crossed, we'll actually be in a house and it'll all be good. So thank you guys for the kind words about that course. I really have put pretty much everything in into that course, but I keep wanting to make it even better. Thank you guys so much for that. Okay. I think that is it. Are there any other questions that I didn't get to that you would like to ask? Taryn says, so do you use your planner for your writing and courses and YouTube? And do you plan with all those streams and how long you can take? So all of those streams of income go into my HB90 planning. So I have 3 goals. One is for all of my income streams that have to do with Sarra Cannon. Then I have my second goal, which is always for heart breathings. And heart breathings is where a lot of the different income streams come from, because I've got my Erin Condren affiliate, which is one of them. YouTube comes from both Sarra Cannon and from heart breathings, but I make a lot more on heart breathings, obviously, because I have more income here. I also, in the new year, I'm probably going to be doing more like partnerships and sponsored videos. And then, so a lot of the different income streams, Etsy, YouTube, courses, all come under my goal number 2. And I do have all of that scheduled in to that goal number 2. And then goal number 3 for me this next quarter is all about reducing my anxiety and kind of that leveling up 6 months for life, which if you followed my Sarra Cannon coffee chats, you know what 6 months for life is over there. Is Publish and Thrive only for people who do not plan on conventional publishing? So yes, it's a self-publishing course. So if it's mostly for people who are looking at self-publishing, though I will say that you could still learn a lot about your strategy, even if you were planning to traditionally publish, but I don't know if it would really be worth the cost for you if you want to traditionally publish. But there's a ton of information about self-publishing and running your own business there. Could you suggest an accounting software for authors? I need to start paying quarterly taxes and I'm freaking out. So the one that most people use that I know is just QuickBooks, is one of the easier one to set up that you can connect to your bank accounts and everything else. But I have never used an accounting software. I pretty much just literally send all this stuff to my accountant and he does it, which gets very expensive. But I understand the freaking out, but it's also really exciting, Roseanne, because that means that you're making enough money to need to pay quarterly taxes, which is awesome. But yeah, bookkeeping can sometimes be less expensive than you think. Now, through my accountant, it's going to be more expensive than it would be otherwise, but there are things like Bench and some other ones out there that you can do bookkeeping for not as much, and they can tell you how much estimate you would owe. But if you want to do it yourself, I would recommend QuickBooks. We're going to kill 2022 together. Woo! I know we're going to crush it. When blocking our time and planning, how many drafts should we plan to do? Okay, that's a really good question too. So I only put on the sheet, I put rough draft and then I put edits. So I would put everything under that rough draft umbrella, even if you're doing multiple edits. But the truth is, nobody can really tell you how many drafts you need. I think I probably go through 3 drafts before I do my final edits. And then edits, even I do 2 drafts of edits. I do one editing pass, and then I go back and do like a final edit where I listen to it being read to me. So that's going to be something that you think about for your own process. But I would just, that is kind of a good question to really be thinking about, because if you have your 50 days or whatever you needed to write it, and then you're going to put in another draft, then you might want to add in another period of time for that. But I wish I could tell you what would be an average for that, but I just can't, because it's going to be different for everybody. But I would definitely pay attention. I know people that don't even do a rough draft. They just draft and edit as they go. And so it's like once they're done, the book is done. And so it's really that much variety there. And I can't fully guide you on that other than to say, pay attention. And the more you write down, like have some kind of journal or planner that says how much time you spent and what you did, like document your process, the more you're going to be able to use that in the future. I love this community. Thank you so much, Kim. I love that. QuickBooks Self-Employed is a good option. Thank you for that. Trad publishers want you to do your own marketing. That is true. As a trad published writer, I found it exceptionally worthwhile. Thank you so much for that, Paula. I've self-published before, last time re-releasing a 2018 anthology in 2019. So would Publish and Thrive be good for me, or do I probably already know what's in P&T? So there are a lot of people who have taken it who already had several books out. So there will be some things that you will learn, some things that you'll already know. Like you may already know how to upload to Amazon, you may already know how to format your book, but there's a lot of stuff in there about organic marketing and about, really optimizing your website and tracking your sales and some other stuff that you may not know, like starting your business, accounting, all of these different things. So it's really, I think it can be super helpful to anybody who even has a full series out who has just not found the level of success that they're looking for. Just be aware that there's going to be some things in there that are basic that you probably already know. So could Publish and Thrive help with this, with marketing? Yes and no. Like I don't go into like how to take out Facebook ads and stuff like that. And some of the like newsletter ads and different types of marketing there would be tough for you to do as a trad pubbed author because you won't have control over sales and different things like that. I really feel like it's best if you're self-publishing, and probably not as good for somebody who's only going to be traditionally publishing, because it might not be worth the cost. Like you might be able to find out that stuff in other places. How do you estimate the total word count for your books, and how do you estimate how many scenes you need per book or chapter, or how long they are? Greetings from Germany. I love our German community. We have so many people in our Writing Sprints group that are from Germany as well. So what I would say is estimating how many words are going to be in your book. I don't personally estimate how many scenes I need per book or chapter. It just is whatever it is. So I don't personally do an estimate on that, but I do try to estimate the total word count per book. And that is totally off a gut feeling, which I know is you're going to be like, well, that doesn't help me at all. But for me, it's because I've written 26, I think it's 26, maybe 27 at this point, novels. I just kind of have a feel for how much stories there's going to be. Plus, if my previous book was 60,000 words, you can bet my next one's going to be like 65, because they tend to grow for me. But if you are sitting in a place where you're like, I just don't have enough experience yet to say how long it is, then I would go based on kind of an average for your genre, which is sort of disappearing a little bit as we get more into self-publishing. But if you're writing, say, like a young adult contemporary romance, then maybe you would guesstimate about 60 to 70,000 words. If you're writing an adult fantasy novel that is like an epic fantasy, then maybe you want 150 to 200,000 words. If you're writing a standalone horror, it could be anywhere from maybe 70 to 85,000. So kind of maybe you could Google like what's the average horror novel word count, and then you could find out from there. Romances can kind of go anywhere from 15,000 words to 150,000 words, just depending on what type of romance it is. But I think if you're just starting out, the best thing to do is just kind of Google what's the average, look at some of the books that you have loved in the past, and see if you can find out how many chapters or how many words are in that book, and then use that as an estimate, as a jumping off point. But then don't hold yourself back. If it ends up being longer, then that's fine. If it ends up being shorter, that's fine too. And just pay attention to the process and document it as you go. But that's kind of what I do. But I never estimate how many chapters or scenes, other than when I'm plotting, I know instinctively what pieces of the plot need to happen. And so then I kind of go from there. I need more time to go through that question 100%, but hopefully that does help a little bit. Wave, I knew there was one. Thank you, Stacy, for saying that. Wave, I think they have an app and you can put your receipts in and everything, and it's free. So that is one I was trying to think of. So that might be a good one to look at as well. I have books out, but I'm planning on rapid releasing in a different genre. What? Okay, we need to talk. You need to send me a message. Sarah's a powerhouse. Thank you, Renee. You're so sweet. Heart Breathings needs a coffee chat. So we do. Heart Breathings needs a coffee chat. So we have a Sarra Cannon coffee chat, but maybe we need a Heart Breathings coffee chat because there's definitely a lot of questions coming in. I was told my crown chakra is blocked and has kept me from being as productive as I like. How do I unblock it? Crown chakra, would that be purple? Is that the right color for the crown chakra? Eat purple vegetables like eggplant, maybe. Wear purple colors. Get amethyst stones and keep them near you. Acupuncture can help. Crown chakra is going to be all about like this area here. So this brain space, I guess. You could definitely read more about it, but I just intuitively, I would say meditation would probably help a lot with that. Accounting service is a tax deduction too. Yes, amen to that. All right, so let's see if there's any more questions. How do you block? Oh, do you block in your writing retreats in your HB90 planner? So it's been so long. Oh my gosh, there's so many things here. Oh, maybe crown is white. You could be right. I could be thinking of like brow chakra is purple. I've worked so much with my throat chakra. That's the main one that I keep working with. And then lately solar plexus. So I'm not sure. You could be right about white. Headstands. Yeah, maybe. So I'll answer this question and then we'll kind of wrap things up. But I think that it can be helpful to block out those writing retreats and things like that in your HB90 planner if you know when they are ahead of time, because there you can give yourself like extra time, because if you're doing a writing retreat and you know you're going to write like twice as much as normal, then you can take that into consideration when you're doing your plan. So let's say like a good writing retreat could make up for 3 days that you had to take off for your migraines or whatever. If you have a really successful writing retreat, that could be like a week's worth of writing in a single weekend. So it's important to account for that, but you just don't want to give yourself like a ton of extra time just because you want to try to stay on schedule. And then if you get ahead, you just kind of bump everything up a little bit. So I think that can be helpful. But yeah, I usually do. If I have a writing retreat on the schedule, I've just gotten so much out of practice of actually being able to go away and do a writing retreat because I had a baby and it's so much harder to leave George home with 2 kids. So she's just starting to get old enough. Maybe once she's fully potty trained, it'll be good to be able to do that. So yeah, I would block those out. For some people though, like sometimes I feel like my writing retreats are only as successful as I am with my plotting. So sometimes I'm thinking, gosh, I wish I didn't have my retreat scheduled yet because I'm not quite ready for it. So there we go. Yeah, word count. Just read the top 10 books in your genre and average them. It's a start. Yeah, I think if you don't have your own experience, then go by what is kind of typical in your genre right now, or what one of your favorite books is in the genre. Like if it's a traditionally published book, then you could Google it, like how many words does Gone Girl have, and see how much, and then just use that as an example. Yes, potty training on the road. We're in this apartment for 3 months and we bought a little potty. So wish me luck. Clear quartz is good for crown chakra or selenite. So I have this beautiful clear quartz crystal point that I got from Catherine's in Kina, the Manifestation Babe. And this is one of my favorite crystals. It's a really good one. So Kobo has words counts listed on the product page. There you go. That is a perfect example. Yes, they do. I'm so glad you mentioned that. So you could look up some of your favorite books in the genre and they will tell you, it tells you an average or an estimate of how many pages it is and how many words it has in the book. So that's a really good one. So my course my courses are at heartbreathings.teachable.com, and they are currently all closed, but I will open up at the end of January. Publish and Thrive and HB90 will open up as a bundle that you can get both courses for $100 off the total price. And this will be the first time I've ever offered like a longer payment plan. I usually offer like a 3-month payment plan, or I think I've been offering a 6-month payment plan, but I'm going to offer a 12-month payment plan just to make it easier for some people, because I know the last couple of years have been tough. So those will be a little bit extra for a little bit more affordable, hopefully for some of you that need it. So that's it. 2 hours of live. I can't believe we had over 500 people here at one point. Thank you all so much for being here. Again, just to tell you how much I appreciate all of you and this wonderful community. It has been obviously a rough few months for me for a variety of reasons, but the amount of love and support that came my way over the past few weeks has been life-changing and life-affirming, and it means the world. 2022 is going to be a better year. We're going to plan together. We're going to have some fun together. I will be here to support you. This community will be here to support you. You are not alone as a writer. If you have any questions about where to get this download, you can find in the description box where you can sign up for my mailing list if you want to grab it. And there will be lots more fun downloads coming in the new year. And I'm going to have probably 1 or 2 more videos coming up with my planner. I don't know if I'm going to get to a December notebook challenge, but I might just do one kind of going through my planners. So there will be maybe 1 or 2 more videos, and then we are done with 2021 and on to 2022. So I hope that you got a little bit of information and some excitement out of this, and I will see you guys next week in our next video. But yes, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to you. Whatever you celebrate, I hope that you are with your family or with people that you love, and that you know that you are loved by me and by this community. All right, you guys, I will see you later. Thank you for joining me, and yeah, see you next week. Bye.